fantastic people that I never thought I would. Good morning to them all, because I know they're all tuned our way this morning. But when we talk about holidays, my next guest has some bizarre stories to tell, because he's written it all down. He stuck it in a book called SEASPRAY and Whiskey. Norman Freeman joins me in studio. Norman, good morning.
Good morning indeed.
And I mean, you know, you're just telling me briefly the outline of the book now before we came on air. So let's start at the beginning. For a start, I love the cover. It is beautifully done.
Yes.
And it's all about a cruise.
It's actually a voyage on a down-at-heel grubby cargo ship.
Okay, so not a cruise.
It's not a cruise, no.
Not one of these huge big floating hotels that you go on.
I was a radio officer with the Marconi Company, and they supplied radio equipment to a whole variety of ships, big passenger ships, oil tankers, and grubby little cargo ships like the one I was on.
Right.
And the man to operate it. So I was the radio officer there, and I wouldn't have chosen to go on this ship. The accommodation was bad and the food was bad, but I was working in the Marconi Company, and they put me on the ship and said, that's your post.
That's where you're going.
And I joined it on a dark, miserable night in Liverpool.
Right.
And it was empty. There was nobody on it, but the third mate came out, and he looked at me and he said, "You must have been caught sleeping with the Marconi radio officer, our manager's wife, to be put on a ship like this." And
were you?
No, I wasn't. No, I certainly wasn't. But the first thing I had to do when I came into my cabin was to hunt a rat out of the middle of the floor.
Nice.
Yes, and he went out very slowly, as if he kind of owned the place.
As if, who are you to throw me off the ship? Yeah.
That's right. And the crew were all ashore drinking, you know, and later on I heard them coming back on board, and they were all shouting and yelling, and later on a tremendous row broke out, fighting, and I couldn't believe it. But I think they were too drunk to do one another any real harm, you know.
Just messing around. So you left Liverpool. Where did you go?
We went to New York.
Ooh, that's a long cruise.
We went to New York, and it was in the middle of winter. And it was the most horrendous voyage. It was a small ship, 6,000 tons. And so we were going up and down and up and down. And it was very, very difficult. But it was entertaining in the sense that the captain was a jolly round fellow with a red face. And he liked sailing, and he was full of wit. And he enlivened the place. But he knew that there was some pilfering going on. Yes. We had loaded, part of our cargo was a consignment of VAT 69 whiskey. And on a roughneck ship like that, people noticed it. And we weren't long at sea before it began to be pilfered by the crew. And so there was a smell of whiskey off people's breath.
Did you indulge yourself?
I didn't. I was a teetotaler, actually.
Right, okay.
I mightn't have been able to write that book.
What a ship to be on.
Yes. And we spent Christmas at sea.
Wow.
And I always remember the food wasn't ever great, but you know, normally the plum pudding is doused in brandy or something. Yeah. In this case, it was absolutely saturated with stolen whiskey. And when the steward carried it into the saloon, it was a ball of blue flame.
It's a wonder it didn't blow up.
Well, it was so bad that the captain took a jug of water and doused it. And it was like a cannonball at the end of it. It was smoking like an old cannon, and it was thrown out. We could hear a clanking sound as it was thrown into the bin.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and there were things like that happening all the time. And then we went down to New Orleans. And by the way, that was the first time I ever heard Cajun music. We came up the Mississippi, and I was listening to local radio stations, and I heard stations speaking French, and I wondered what sort of stations are these, and they began to play this strange music that I had never heard before. And of course, there was a lot of country and western music as well in the local radio stations.
Well, in the deep south, I mean, you've got your bluegrass, you've got your mix of country and your Cajun music, and you put it all together and you get the most unusual sound. Yeah,
and there was an endless variety of small. And I was the radio officer, so I had access to a big marine transmitter, and I was able to tune in here and there to hear all this. But when we got to New Orleans, of course, it was a time of riotous living, and it was fueled and sustained by stolen whiskey.
Did any of the whiskey make its destination at all?
Oh, it did, yeah. Yeah, it did, but there was about 900 bottles missing when we got to Houston, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Actually, crates were carried ashore in New Orleans. It became a kind of a currency. However, local hotel owners and local pub owners got wind of it all, and when we got to Houston and so much was found to be missing, the FBI were informed. So when we came back to New Orleans to load cargo for the UK, they came on board and they searched the whole ship.
And did they find any empties?
Well, what happened was the third mate, who was a teetotaler and didn't indulge in whiskey drinking, he decided he'd sell a crate of whiskey, and it was a set-up. And he was arrested and put in jail. And as soon as that happened, it happened in the evening, everybody on board knew the FBI would be on board first thing in the morning, and this ship would be searched from stem to stern. So at about 3 a.m, bottles of whiskey were thrown into the Mississippi. Nobody wanted to be caught with it and end up in jail in Baton Rouge like the third mate. So
and the third mate, did he have to stand trial?
He was put on trial, and then he was sent home.
Okay.
It was cheaper to send him home on another ship later on, rather than keep him there. But I think it ruined his career, all right, you know. And it was a pity, because he was one of the few who didn't drink. And then when we were on our way home, then the chief steward, who was a bit stewed a lot of the time, he'd forgotten to get enough beer and other spirits on board. So we went home a dry ship. The chief engineer said, "Well, we've had the feast, now for the famine."
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like many a story you have to tell. This is a cracking book. I'm looking forward to reading this. It's published by, is it Ian Allen?
Ian Allen, they're British publishers.
And how long did it take you to put this book together, Norman?
It was about 2 years. I was in the habit of telling stories about this famous voyage, and people said to me, "Look, you should put it down on paper." So I did it, and it was published first about 17 years ago in Ireland.
Right.
And the book never died, really.
Yeah.
It went to the Chicago Book Fair, and then it was picked up there, and then it was picked up by the Common Reader Book Club in the United States. And it was selling moderately there, and it kept going. And in the end, it was picked up by Ian Allen.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's a great success story for the book. The cover is terrific as well. That's obviously been recovered now since.
Oh, it has. I feel that anybody who has made a journey, a holiday, or not necessarily a voyage, but everyone who goes to a gig or goes to a concert, they all come back with stories.
Oh, indeed.
Sometimes the car broke down, or the tickets were lost, or something went wrong, or good things happened and bad things happened. So I think that's in the same category, and that's why people might want to read it.
Well, do you know, when I was over on holidays there, we used to catch the ferry from one part of the island over to the other, because it's a beautiful sandy beach. And for a week after I came home, and every day we were getting this ferry boat from one part of the island to the other. And I came home, and every time I closed my eyes, I could feel myself from side to side. I was like, "Oh, this has got to stop." So I mean, to come in and do a story on this voyage of, well, discovery of more kinds than one is absolutely super for me today. It's been great to meet you.
All right, and I hope you enjoy reading it. I hope others do as well.
Well, it's SEASPRAY and Whiskey, the tale of a turbulent voyage, written by Norman Freeman and published by Ian Allen. Norman, a pleasure. I'm sure you've much more stories.
Well, I have the odd one. But I don't want to become a seafaring bore.
Well, listen, a pleasure to have you in studio with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Lindsay.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
That is author Norman Freeman, SEASPRAY and Whiskey, the tale of a turbulent